Hey everybody, welcome to the third video. So our third front end, we're going to be doing Vue in this video. Okay, so that was my test run, so we got that accomplished. So first thing you need to do if you're going to be working with Vue and following along with my tutorial here is you're going to want to download the Vue CLI. Okay, so let me go to the installation. You're going to run this command. I've already done it, so that way you get the newest version of the CLI. Okay, so you're going to run that, get the CLI installed, and then we're going to create a project. So I'm going to cd into our folder with all our front ends, lots of apps, and then basically you're going to do view create, and we'll just call this view front end. And then we will just wait for that to create our application. It's going to ask us a few questions. So wait for it to start up. Takes a second. Okay, I'm just going to go with the default. And I'm going to let that do its thing. I'm going to pause this, and I will see you guys when this thing is done installing, because it doesn't take as long as Angular, but still takes a while. Okay, so it looks like this is just about wrapping up downloading, or installing, almost. But I think we should start being able to see the files over here, so I can start giving you guys a tour while that wraps up. Okay, so let me close all these extra folders, View front end. And the cool thing about Vue is that a little history on Vue. Vue is created by ex-Google developer Evan You, and essentially what it does, it takes a lot of things. Like if you ever use the original Angular JS, there were some nice features. A lot of things you saw when I did Angular, things like the ng4s and the ng models that made life a lot easier, like being able to bind your forms with two-way binding makes forms a lot easier, and you don't have that in React. And the V4s, while you can do a map in your JSX and React, it was a nice little thing. But Angular 2 and above, while you still had all those features, the overall boilerplate, the overall sort of setup was a lot more work. And what basically those nice little convenient features were offset by like a lot of setup. So Vue takes a lot of that, so you end up having like a V4 and a V model that work the same way that those kind of work in AngularJS, but you have this like really nice sort of very simple setup. In the same way, kind of like how Angular had three files, you would have your HTML file for your template, your TypeScript file for your all your JavaScript logic, and then you would have a CSS file. Vue puts it all into one file, a Vue file, but they're all separated. So your CSS is separated from your template. So just to kind of show you, in the beginning you'll have one component in here in the components folder called hello world.view. We're not going to use that, but I'll just show you so you can see how the template works. So you see there's just your normal HTML in a template tag. That's first. It doesn't have to be first. Then there's your JavaScript in a script tag. And then all your CSS in a style tag. Okay, and you can put it all in one file. Which is nice. Okay, it's very clear. Where do I do what? Where do I do my CSS? In the style tags, but it's all in one file. So logically, like this is all pretty straightforward on how you think about this. So what we're going to do is we're going to do everything out of the root component, the app.view component. So I'm going to just delete the existing template. Well, actually, even before I do that, let me just show you sort of the default. So let's do npm run serve. Okay, we have the cd into the folder, so cd view front end, and then do an npm run serve. That's going to run the dev server for Vue, like the last couple times, like React, like Angular. It takes a second for this to start up. Okay, so Vue. So that's the cool thing about Vue, though, is like it wasn't Google, it wasn't Facebook. Facebook's React, Google's Angular. It was Evan You, and yet Vue has grown to be sort of the third largest of the frameworks, mainly because it is kind of easy to learn and easy to use. As you'll see when we actually get to the part where we're building the app, we'll build the app pretty quickly. So all that took me like an hour in the Angular video, and where I had to do all the setup to import all these modules and then create an object to import into another object, so I can do the API call. Again, all those features are really nice in more robust app when you're making more robust enterprise applications where you're reusing a lot of those pieces and having sort of that makes it pretty convenient. But again, for a small to-do app like this, you could tell that was like a lot of overkill in that Angular app. But here it's pretty straightforward. So okay, let's see here. Now it should be open. So let's create a new tab, and that's going to be open on localhost 8080. Okay, and then this is sort of your default view page. So that's what you get when you run this. So I'm going to delete this. Okay, and I'm just going to put in H1, or I'll put a div, just so that way everything's wrapped in a div. And right now, what we're going to have in there is an H1 that says hello world. This is in the app component. Okay. H1 / save. Okay, and we'll see this. It's going to change. Well, give it a second. The hello world component has not. Oh. Okay, so basically, since this was originally bringing in that component, the way you bring in the component is in your script tag. I would import it. So they imported the hello world component. So I'm not going to do that anymore because I'm not going to use it. And then they would register it. So what happens is that there's what's called the view instance. So every view component has this instance of a view object. And this view object has all these different properties in it that provide all the information to that view object. Because essentially what you're doing is there's a class that's view, but unlike React and Angular where you directly work inside the class and there's all this like class stuff going on, what it's doing is that there's this function that's passing in this object, creating the class, generating the component, doing all the stuff for you. So you just have to provide it with all the data. So that's essentially what's happening with this export. You're exporting the object that'll be passed into the constructor of the view instance that has everything, and then this gets passed into the template of the view instance, and so does the style tag. So it all basically, the view builder, when you run the build command at the end, it knows to take all this stuff and pass it into that object. You could just do it without this, and you could just use a script tag and build out these view instances yourself, but just so you can understand kind of what's going on. So it's assembling all this, which is kind of similar to something I was doing with web components, which Vue, I think, is shifting to trying to make more of what's going on under the hood to use web components in the browser, which now that I've done a lot of work with web components makes a lot more sense why they structure certain things the way they do. Cool. So again, I'm not going to use any external components, so I don't have to list them here. So right now, the only thing we have is just the name of this particular component, which is app. Okay, so I'll save, and then all we should have here is hello world in a second. Div has no matching end tag. It doesn't. Oh, backslashes, they matter. Okay. There we go. Okay, good. Compiled successfully, got hello world. Okay, cool. So basically, there's a lot of different things you can pass into this object that's in your script tag, and you can do stuff above it too. So you can do all sorts of JavaScript stuff above that. That's not the only thing you can do, but it's this object that really does all the work. And I'm not going to go through every possible property, but you will learn a handful of them here and get the idea of how Vue works. It's all just about building up this object. So generally, like your state in React, which is again, these are the variables that would cause the component to update if they changed, that goes inside a data property, and the data property takes a function. So you just have to pass in a function that returns an object, and then this object can have all your variables that you want in your data. Okay. And basically what we're going to have is we're going to have our list of to-dos. So I'll create that property, which will start out as an empty array. And then later on, we're going to have our input, which is going to input box to create new to-dos. That'll start out as an empty string. I think those are the only two properties we really need at the moment. Okay, I'm just going to create one more property called hello world, or hello, that has hello world in it, just to show you how to interpolate in Vue. Okay, save. And this is object closed. Good. Yeah, that should be all set. So let me save this. Okay. And what we're going to do here is instead of having H1 and it just hard-coded hello world. The way you would use that variable is just it's 2 curly brackets and 2 curly brackets, and in the middle I pass in hello. Okay, and then that's going to grab this property over here. Save. Okay, and see, it still works. Still hello world. Okay, just so you can see how that's done. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so that data object is created. Let me just make sure that I match this up. That ends here. So first thing we want to do is we want to get that when we want to go make the API call to go get the data for our to-dos. So what we're going to do is that in Angular you had the ng on init function, which is the function that happens before the component renders. In React you had, if you were using a class component, you had like this when component mounts function, and if you're doing functional components you use the useEffect hook. Here we have a before create function that you can just define as a property of the object, of the view object. Okay, and there you would just do your thing. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, and so all I want to do here is I just want to go call the API. So I'm just going to be like fetch, put in the string http / www. No, not www. Localhost. 4000 is where my API is running, and that's that. Then we put the .then, because when we get back a response, the response is going to be a readable stream, which we can't really do much with. So we need but readable streams have a function called JSON that helps you parse that readable stream. So we're going to do that, response.json. That's a promise, so .then we can chain off that promise. So we'll get back the actual JSON data from that function, which we can do stuff with now. Let me just put a parentheses right there. And we're going to console.log JSON so you can see we got the data. And then we're going to say this .todos, because again, this is being passed into a class. It is constructing a view object. So this .todos equals JSON. Okay, save. So let's save that. Just make sure that it builds fine. Good, it builds, and we should see that console log. So Control-Shift-I. Okay, and there are dev tools for each of these frameworks. So see, I have like Augury, which is I think is the Angular dev tools, but I'm not using Angular right now. There's the Vue dev tools, so I can see the different components. So see, that's going to detect as Vue, and I can go in here and kind of like the React dev tools, see what's inside there. And then there's, well, you only see it if the React's playing, but there's another one called the Utsi components. So always look to see if there's browser dev tools for your particular framework that you're using. Makes life a lot easier. Okay, but let's go back to the console. And there we see the array. Okay, so we see that the API call is working. And then if I go to the Vue DevTools, I see that my to-dos data is actually all the to-dos. Okay, so it's working. But right now it's not on the screen. We gotta go add it to our template. So the way we would do this is you just go to the template. We're gonna make them all in H2. And then you just use the v4 command. Okay, pretty straightforward. And then in here, put in some quotation marks, and we're going to put a parentheses, and we're going to say to do. So each individual to do is a to do, and then also we're going to want the index. Then it's of to dos, and that's going to refer to the to dos over here. Okay, and then we also need to add a key property, kind of like in React where you have to do a key whenever you map over a list. And that's just going to be the index. So it's referring to this index variable here. Okay, and then that's it. So then what we do is each time we go around, we just want the value to be to do, because again, to do is just a string. /h2. Okay, and then that's it. That should render the list to the screen. So basically, what's going to happen is that the component will load, do this API call, which make to do the array of all the strings of the to-dos, and then this v4 directive will just basically have Vue iterate over that array, and ta-da! Okay, so this is all going by a lot quicker than it was in the Angular video. So let's see here. Okay, the last thing we have to do is make the input. Okay, so let's make the input. And that's going to be type equals text. And then we're going to use the V model, okay, which works a lot like the ng model in Angular. It just does two-way binding with the form. And then we just put the variable that we're binding this input to, which is input, which again I have right over here in my data object. Okay, V model equals input. Well, yeah, so that binds that. Good. And now we just need to create a function for a button. So to create like methods for like events, what we can do is we're gonna create another property. So I'm gonna put a comma at the end of before create, and we're gonna have a property called methods. And methods is just essentially an object with all the functions that will be methods of your view object. Okay, so then here we're gonna make create a function called add to do. Okay, and then this function will okay, add to do, and that will do this thing. And then basically what we want to do here is just we're going to do, when you click on the button, it's just going to do a fetch. So except now we're making a post request. So first we got to put the URL http://localhost 4000 / oh, we don't even need to put a slash. Put that there, and then comma. Then we have to put in this big object with all our configurations. So that's going to be like method. This is a post request. Then we need to have our headers, which is another object. And inside there, we need to have the header of content type, so it can tell it it's JSON. Content type colon application JSON. Okay, that's the only header we need. And then one more property, the actual body, the to-do that we're sending over, which has to be an object with a property to do, because that's how we created our API. To do, but the value of to do will just be whatever the value of the input is. And it's actually this dot input, because it's again underlying this is all being passed into a class. So this to do variable that's in our data over here is really like this dot input. Cool. Okay, so that function is created. So we have this add to do function that'll get called. Now we just need to make the button that calls that function. See, everything is just adding properties to this one giant object that we're exporting in a script tag. So you just build out this object, and then everything in this object becomes available to your template, and then you can style your template in the style tags. Again, not a hard way to do things, which is why Vue keeps growing in popularity quite quickly. Input. Okay, now I want to create a button. And to do events, you just do v on, and then colon the kind of event you want. This is a click event, so if it was like a submit or whatever, just v on whatever, and equal, and the event is, I mean, the function was called add. I think it was it add to do? I think it was add to do. Good. Add to do. You just put you don't have to invoke it there. You just put the name of the function there, and then we'll just say submit. / button, save. Okay, let's wait for it to compile. Oh, there's an error, so let's find out what it is. Okay, I think probably missing some curly brackets then. So let's see here, we have a curly bracket for the function. What does this curly bracket belong to? Methods. Good. What does it want the trailing comma? We'll give it the trailing comma. But let's see here. We have this one belongs to that. Fetch. Oh yeah, I didn't finish this function. That's why. There's no close to this parentheses, so let me do that. And then we got to do the dot thens. because we do want the response from this post request. So we get the response, and then the response we need to turn into JSON. So response.json, and then we're going to take the JSON from result, and once again we're just going to assign that to to-dos. Okay. This is going to be this dot to-dos equals JSON. Because technically, again, we designed our API where it's returning us the updated list of to-dos. So, save. Okay. See here, there's a compile right, still complaining. This dot to-dos equals JSON. Oh, I forgot another parentheses. There we go. There we go. Now it looks nice and pretty. Let's see if it finished building, and it built successfully. So this should be working now. And let's eat lunch. Submit. Oh nope, the API call did not succeed. Let's see why. We got promise token JSON. Let's take a look at network. Bad requests, response, error, syntax are unexpected. Oh, I forgot the stringify. That's why. Okay, so let's go back over here to the body here. This needs to be wrapped in a JSON stringify because that's what you're supposed to do. Almost there. Nope. That's one. The only thing about view files is that the little extensions that help you support these view files, they don't necessarily have the same benefits of working with normal JavaScript files. JSON.string if I cool, because it has to turn it into a JSON string, not just a JavaScript object. So save, and I think now this is done. Eat lunch, and then I hit submit. And yay, it works. So see, we did that in like 22 minutes. That's a lot better than the near hour of Angular 9. Again, Angular 9 has plenty of benefits, but again, this is like a nice, simple. Still has like the for and the two-way binding of the form, which is nice, without all that module setup. And again, React we did really fast. One also because I do a lot of React work. But yeah, enjoy. This is a nice little like dipping your toe into Vue. Now on the next couple of videos we'll do other frameworks like Svelte and Stencil.js, and then probably just do like a plain vanilla web components attempt, and then also use maybe a library that I made called Basic Elements. So I'll see you guys there. Ciao.